Alright everybody, we're around the back side of Bob here. Gonna work on some rear brake drums. This is referred to as a round wheel arch car, Mark III Midget. And let's get after it. So, first thing you gotta do, normally these aren't here. I actually bought these because mine weren't and stuck them in. Just keeps things from rattling around. It ain't bad. They're 80 cents or something, I think. So you pull them out. Then, if things are free, we're also, well, before I pull that off, you can see the sheen on this. And it's actually oily down in where I took all this stuff out. This has a rear wheel seal. It's also bad. We're going to be replacing. So pull this guy off. Yeah, look at all that oil. That's a greasy mess. Yes. And there's also a ridge where the brake pads have been riding, and it's wore a pretty good ridge in there. So we're going to be replacing those. Yep, greasy mess. Next thing, this guy, we'll pull him off. But actually got oil on my floor down here dripping out of this. We're going to grab a pan, throw down here, so when you take this off, there's a good chance that rear end oil is going to come out. Got us a nice little bucket. Throw it down here. See, and there's an oil drip on the floor. I know where to put it. And it's the same process. We're going to go right into taking stuff apart. If you're just doing brakes, you don't need to do this. You would just start removing these guys. But see, I got to do a rear wheel seal anyway. If I take this out, this gets a lot of extra pieces out of the way. So, another one of the exact same screws. Don't have to worry about getting them confused because they're all the same. And this guy, see if he'll pull out of there. This one's had a lot of silicone put to it. Somebody probably trying to fix the leak without actually fixing the leak. Oh, there she broke. I'm just gonna work around it a little bit. There we go. Also goes to say you want this thing chalked up, blocked up something, because once you remove this, there's nothing holding the car in place in gear. And obviously the brakes aren't going to do anything. So pull this guy out of there. Expecting to make sure all this stuff's nice, straight, and true. It all looks happy, nothing out of sorts. We'll have to clean this edge up at some point. Set that off to the side. Alright. Now, where the oil's coming from, inside of here goes straight to your rear differential. That is an oil bath setup. The oil comes out of there, goes around here, and that's what actually lubricates this wheel bearing. And on the other side of the wheel bearing, back in here, there's a seal. And that seal has failed on me. Therefore, that oil comes out, goes through the bearing, comes out back here, and just sprays everything, which makes your brakes not work good. Makes the fluid leak out of here, and eventually could take out the rear end from lack of oil. Or take these bearings out first. The other side, I had to replace that bearing. The seal was good over there, but apparently it had taken enough oil away that the bearing was not happy. And this is way too much silicone. It's the same thing. This is how much was gobbed around the outside. If it's gobbed on the inside and it gets inside of there while this is spinning, yeah, that bearing does not like it. So We're going to continue taking apart here. Normally there's supposed to be a paper gasket here too, which I don't think it's here anymore. I think they just went right straight to the silicone. Alright, so this nut's going to come off, then this will come off. You might say, Lee, this socket and ratchet setup's a little bit overkill. And you would be right. But it fits, and the shoe fits, we're using it. Alright. See if she'll loosen up that way. Nope. Now right here is a lock, more or less, that they actually did get it to stop it pretty good. So we gotta get a screwdriver and bend this flap out. And by screwdriver I actually mean chisel this time. And basically what that's doing is keeping my screwdriver now so I don't completely destroy my chisel, is keeping that nut from spinning loose while you're moving. Now obviously if you're going to save your bearing, you don't want to be beating on it with a screwdriver. I'm putting new bearings in, so we're not worried about saving anything this trip. Alright, let's see if that'll sit on there. Alright, nice push down on this side. And out she comes. Set this aside. And this guy wiggles out. You gotta wiggle him out this way, because there's a little tab that sticks out there that goes through a drilled hole. And the same thing, putting it back in, you have to get that just right. But it'll flip out once you get it to the correct orientation. Yeah, and there you can see what I was talking about. Look at that. There's some of that silicone inside between the bearings. That's not helping them bearings at all. So not only is it rolling in the oil, occasionally it's taking that silicone and sucking it up in where it don't belong. Alright. Let's see if this will easily come off, or if we're going to have to work on it a little. She's on there. Keep in mind, you don't want to put enough force on this that you're going to hurt something. That's not working, so we're going to get our jaw puller and attack it that way. Want to protect these threads. I keep forgetting on this side it's also reverse threaded. I'm guessing that's what LH means there, left hand. The other side spun the opposite direction. Okay. Now we've run this nut in basically flush with the tube, so that we're pushing on the tube and the nut equally. And we're going to attempt to hook that around there on each side. Something like that. Walk that in a little ways. We have the nut on some. We'll have to watch. We can only pull it back till it touches the nut, but hopefully that's enough to break it free, and then I can manually extract it the rest of the way. Ah, there she popped. There she comes, coming up against the nut. Didn't take much to get it to pop. Pull out her nut some. Give it a little bit of pry action here. Ooh, she's still on there pretty good. I'll have to give it just a whisker more this way. We're not using an impact or anything aggressive doing this either. We just want to gently work it out. So right now we're prying against threads. It is coming. Work against the nut again. Throw that stuff on the ground. So used to threads going the other way. Boy, she just don't want to come off the whole way. I should have videoed the easy side first. Alright. This point, now that it's flush, I'm putting this against the bearing face and the face of this, which should allow me to work it this way. And there we are. And look at all that greasy goodness. This seal is obviously doing absolutely nothing. There's just gobs of goo coming out of there, and you can see it in here just splattered all around the inside, all this good stuff. Need to loosen this up. I don't want to drop it on the ground, but we'll drop it in a plastic bucket instead. Okay. Bearing just slid right out of there. That's kind of what we were going for earlier. Now this is a point where when you're ordering parts, which I didn't think of it when I was doing it, or I'd have done that to this one, you can get these bearings that's a sealed unit basically and doesn't require being packed with grease, and that then gives you a double seal going through here, because the grease, this doesn't require the lube out of here to lubricate it anymore. So this is sealed, so that oil doesn't get through this seal, and then you have the seal on the back. Gives it 3 seals that it's got to go through before it soaks your brakes, And why this is a big deal is if these are soaked with oil, they don't stop. You lose your friction. And this thing did not stop well. It would stop, but not well. This arm back here is your parking brake. It's got a little pin through here. So this one's little and small enough, I may be able to get it out with my fingers. Nope, I'm gonna have to get a pair of pliers. So with a pair of pliers, this thing, I'm gonna go take and soak it in some degreaser so that it'll be more friendly to work on later. And in case you're wondering, the large nut that I removed first on here was 1 7/8 inches. I try to remember to tell you guys what tools I'm using so you can get them out yourself ahead of time. Alright, there's our little pin. We pulled it out. Then there's another pin. Slides out the bottom. That guy. We'll set these aside so remember to reuse them. We probably won't reuse this guy. I'll get a new one. Then this arm comes off. And that, there you can see how the emergency brake mechanism works. When you pull the brake, it turns a dog in there that pulls back on this, which pushes both of these out to engage them. Pushes through that square hole there, and then this guy hits on the back side and does the opposite. That's how that works. Now the next thing we're going to do is the brake line, so we can replace that cylinder. If you don't have to replace the cylinder, yours is okay, then you can skip this step, obviously. Got an open and brake line tool wrench here, 7/16 on this particular brake line. Pushing down on the back. At some point we will be painting the car. As you can see, it has no paint on it. It was sandblasted. I'm gonna guess sometime in the early 90s. That's when this car was taken off the road. 93, I believe, was the last inspection. And the fella took it and had it completely sandblasted, tore apart, sandblasted, and got it back, and I believe had one of them, oh my god, what did I do moments. And it sat like that till I got it a couple years ago. Alright, brake line is loose. Like I said, 7/16, that's the guy you want. I'll set him up here because I'll need him again. The rest of that kit can sit up here. Nice thing with it not being painted, we don't have to be real careful about throwing our tools around. So that is loose. Let it there out of the way. And we are going to, same thing. I'm going to take the backing plate clear off so I can work on this on the workbench and clean this really good because it's a greasy mess. You don't have to do this, but I'm wanting to do a nicer job, so I am. I'm just going to break these loose. There's 4 of them. Got them broke loose. We'll grab our 1/2-inch wrench. Both sides of this is 1/2 inch. Can have a really nasty looking locking on the back, covered in slop. So covered that part of why I'm cleaning them is because I couldn't even find the nuts on the backside. Because the same slop that's all over in here seeps out through here and comes out through, and all the road grime gets stuck to it. Just makes a mess. know if it won't even come out of the wrench. There we go. And there should be one more. Alright, we are going to reuse them, but I'm going to degrease them first. Now, this whole assembly comes off. And at that point, I can take it over the workbench, and it'll be a whole lot easier to work with. But there you can see all the oil and grime and glop. Apparently, somebody did a brake job on this once and had a hard time getting the brake drum off, so they've got this bent. We're probably going to see about straightening that out a little bit. There's your arm for the parking brake. Also, this is the adjuster to tighten up the brakes. You screw this guy in, and it pushes two little blocks out to expand this to tighten your brakes if they start getting where they're not working well, and the exact opposite going the other way if you have them too tight. But yeah, we're going to take a wire brush and get rid of some of this goop. There's how thick it is on the back side. See about cleaning that up. Whenever I get to the point that I'm actually painting the car, I'm going to pull this axle clear out and clean it up good and paint it. But for now, we're just making it a functional car so I can do some testing with it. I'd rather find out the brakes don't work and run into something before I do the finish paint work. Alright, cleaning parts. While we're moving stuff around, there's the bug eye, by the way. We're using this guy from the Harbor Freight. Set him up to heat. We have a mixture of this Purple Power. I got it at the Walmart, Tractor Supply, those types of places. Some of that and some water. I've already been cleaning some stuff, so it's a little scudgy in there. Set this aside, and that's where all our bolts and all that stuff we're taking apart. It's all going in here. I'm actually going to clean the old bearing just because I might use it for something not wheel related. What else we got in here? A couple more bolts. And I think that's all the parts we're saving. Yep. Yeah, we'll throw this ring in there just to see how it cleans up. Alright. So we'll take this back over, put it here in case there's any drips come out. Put the lid back on. And I've been going about 20-minute spurts. Alright, now we're back over to the workbench. We're going to start taking springs out, I think. Alright, one spring. Same thing, I have new ones of them. Probably not going to reuse those ones. Pull that apart. Slide that like that. I like that. If you're doing this in the car, getting this spring out of here first will help you. That guy comes off and soaked in grease. That makes for good braking. This guy comes off. And we're going to set him aside for the moment. Over here. Then this, we'll straighten that out. We'll turn it over. This is just a rubber seal, replacing it in this process. There's our hook. He slides up off. I have replacement ones of those. They're just good to keep dust and other debris out. Brake, manual brake mechanism, parking brake. You can actually see here how it works. This pulls back and this goes out, which in turn, leverage pushes this one out as well, which separates your brakes, pushing them apart to make them push on the drum. That I have to reuse. We've got our adjuster. It's a little gummy. Let's see if we can find a wrench. 5/16. You're going to screw it down in and out the other side. Get as far as we can so we can grab it on the other side. So I'm also replacing it. Now this has flats on each side. And I said it's the brake adjuster. As it comes up, these little guys, it pushes against them. And the further it comes up, this basically slide down it. And it being tapered from here to down, that adjusts the bottom side of your brakes in and out. These will get wore, and especially with garbage stuck to them like these ones have. They'll get a divot wore in them and then don't successfully adjust the brakes like they're supposed to. Those ones actually don't look bad. I normally probably wouldn't replace them, but seeing I have new ones, I'm going to. Same thing here. These will get wore and the flats will get wore off, and then it won't hold true to keep your brakes where they're supposed to be. All the things we don't have to worry about in modern cars with all the modern adjusting mechanisms. And look at all that wheel bearing grease. Alright, we're almost disassembled. Now on the back side, a ring that holds the master cylinder in. Now, you can use a pair of these fancy pliers. They have little nubbins sticking out, and you can stick them in the holes. And when you squeeze it, that'll expand that and you can pull it off. Mine has the wrong size nubbins in it, so I'm going to go in between. Use a screwdriver to work it off. There we go. And that's off. We'll be reusing that. And then this guy, it's enough crud on him, he didn't want to pull out of there. And there's your wheel cylinder. Pulling them apart. You don't have to do this, I'm just showing you guys. Inside of there, that's your wheel cylinders. Same deal as these, but on the opposite end. When you push, brake fluid pushes into there, and then will in turn force both of these to come outward to put an even tension on your brake pad, and that's how that works. This one being setting forever. Yeah, these don't move anymore. They're rusted solid. Hence why we're replacing them. But some date in a later video, I may tear them down and rebuild them to have them for spares. Because if you're expecting anything to work forever on one of these cars, you're crazy. So it's good to have spare parts around, because you don't know what an availability will be, and if you need to throw it together and you want to go to a show, you want to drive the car and she's broke, it's good to have spares around. Alrighty. We'll get this degreased, these degreased, and whenever they're all cleaned up, we'll bring you guys back and show you assembly. Alright, we got our piece sort of degreased. It's on the starts of. Need to get the seal out now so I can continue to clean in there. Stuff still coming out of the seal. So we're going to use this screwdriver that I use for beating on stuff. Get it in between the sealing surface and the steel a little bit. Give it a couple tappies. Let's see if we can get it to start working out of there. These normally are a battle. It's slowly starting. Let's work our way around it. See if we can get this one up in there maybe a little better. Yeah, that's a little better. We want to be careful. Got it out of there. We want to be careful we don't booger up this mating surface. But there's our seal. The one that's been giving us all the grief. Throw it out of the side. And we'll put this in the cleaner for a little bit more and get that cleaned up a little better. Alrighty. This guy's all cleaned up, ready to go back together. I could spray some paint on them, but we're not going to go to that extreme today. I'll be bringing a lot of this back down later and doing that. So first things first, rubber guy goes back here. Mounts onto this. Stick him through there. Whip him around. Down to about there. It goes over there. Got 4 little tabs that guy's got to get pulled kind of around. Use your little hook kind of help us. Alright, that's around that. And this guy can go back in place there. And we need our cylinder. And you could do this on the car or on the workbench. I had everything apart, so it's easier to do it here. Pull the little cap off. And then this guy, this one's got to line up this little hole. It just sets in there like that. We'll put a rubber boot back on so we don't lose it. This nice little clip. It slipped on, and now that's on there. Way less complicated than what I'm used to working on. Alright, now we need this guy. Well, I guess before we do that, this guy gets screwed back in here. You could put a little anti-seize on it if you wanted to. More of a personal preference. I'm going to run this in quite a ways. So I'm going to have to fight it later. I still have a little bit of grease down in the threads in there to lubricate this. These little pins go on each side. And you can look down in here and see how that works. As you screw it in, it comes up and slowly pushes these out. I'm going to run that down in until basically it's flat down through here, giving me my largest adjustment until we get things set up. Alright, we need this guy. This little hook got to go through this hole, which is far from the easiest thing to do sometimes, but hey, that one went right in. These guys, get them clocked the right direction. That guy goes down through that hole. goes through there, like that. This one gets hooked in the same hole on the opposite side. I suppose probably be easier to do this first. Oh, I got to hook on everything. Let's get that guy in there. There we go. Goes in there. Kind of set into place a little bit. I think I can swing that over. Put that guy in there. Pull that open. And we're just about done with this step. One more spring. Goes in the long slots. And there we are. That is basically together. At this point, do some tested early adjusting, I guess. Now this you can take brake clean and degrease this up nice. I'm not going to, because this is going to be sitting in weather and I'd just soon not be rusting at this point in time. And we'll take this and now we'll screw that in, giving that a spin every once in a while until we feel some resistance. Oh, see right there, that's resistance. We'll knock her off a couple clicks. And that will be set up to go back on the car. This little plug guy goes back in here. On the earlier model cars, you needed this because you actually stuck a screwdriver in this hole to adjust your brakes. Where on later years, they moved it to the back. The same thing, there was a, I believe it's flat-headed screw that you stuck this down into, and you would turn it to adjust up your drag on the brakes. Rubber piece is a little cold, you don't want to go into his home, but that's where his home's going to be, so you better get used to it. Alright, we're back over here at the car. We're going to see about putting our assembly together and back on the car. Now I believe when I took this off, these bolts were through this way and the nut was on the back. I'm going to try to do that the other way because there's a capturer in here that keeps the nut or the bolt from spinning, like so. And I think with the bolt head it'll do a better job of holding it. I don't know if somebody had these off before maybe and they switched it around, but it seems like this would work better. The only time that may not work better is getting this spring off of here. But I don't think it will affect anything enough to matter, because you can always unhook this one, pull it apart, and then pull the whole assembly off and get that spring on and off. So we're going to put it on this way. Then I think it's a whole lot easier to stick these through the back and see what you're doing with the nut instead of trying to feel blindly to put the nut on. So I got 4 of those. All right. We're going to speed them on a little bit. Now when I hold with my finger, I'm going to hold against it from the back. You don't want to get your finger around the sides, because if the nut or the bolt does decide to spin and it grabs your skin and drags it in between there, it's going to hurt. I'm just going to snug these a little. Okay. I'm going to go by hand because I don't want to give too much with the gun. And this one doesn't want to grab on the backside, but there's still room to get the opened end of a wrench on it. Snug it down. And since I got the wrench in my hand, I'm just going to use it on this one. I'll snug it down. And wiggle around there and get that in there. We're going to come back to the first one just to make sure. See, that one's a lot harder to get the wrench on. There we go. Yeah, everybody's good and snug. Alright. All that's in place. Use our line wrench. 3/8, I believe. 7/16. Yep, 7/16 side. And we can get this guy back on here. There it goes. Remember to take this off first or you'll never get the screw in. And it may take some wiggling and wobbling and straightening to get that to decide to thread in. You don't want to cross thread it. Wiggle the line around a little bit. Find its home. Trying not to get my elbow in the camera. Alright. I believe we're starting. Tighten. Okay, that's nice and snug. Now the next thing we're missing, emergency brake. Get out of here, hooks onto there, pushes them guys out. Now that I like to tighten up a little bit more than it is, if I can. Got some room to wobble around on there. This guy over here, this pin from the factory went down through it. We're going to do that. But these guys, from years of wear and bouncing around, gets a little bit of extra play in it. So I like to stick one of these in there, just a washer, just to give it a little bit more a positive grab on that arm. Depending on how much wear, sometimes you can put more than one of those in there. Same thing on the bottom side. Stick one of those down there. And then we can put our cotter pin through. Stick him through the hole. Grab a pair of pliers, needle nose, whatever. Bend it around in a fashion where it won't hook my fingers when I grab a hold of it by accident. Or the next guy. Now we've got a working emergency brake. That's all in place. Everybody sees happy. Nothing wiggles. Now we gotta get our bearing assembly built. I've had this sitting on top of my furnace the last couple of days after cleaning so that it would expand a little bit. These guys, we want to put this guy in here like this. Use our press tool as such. Making sure we got one that's basically the right size. And make sure this guy goes in as straight as possible. Until it's firmly seated. Looks to be even. Appears to be in the whole way. And clamp that. Yeah, you're going to want it to be up tight against in here the whole way. So everything appears to be correct. Alright. Now that that isn't in place, next comes our bearings, which I've kept in a kind of a cool place so that they'll be more happy to go in. It requires a little bit of pre-lube. If you have some kind of a luber tool, this is a good time to use that. I don't have one, so we're just going to make do. This basically just has to lubricate it until the axle lube can get in place. Sure you guys, yeah, you guys can see. This is the fun, icky part. Squeeze that down in with the bearings as much as we can. Yep, that's going to come out up there too. That helps. Apparently they didn't have a real good seal on this. Don't be afraid to get your fingers greasy. Get that in there. While we have a little bit on our fingers, we're going to lube this seal up. That'll make it last that little bit longer, just that little bit of lube when we go to put it on. Spin this around the other way. Squirt some in on this side. I'm moving the inner and outer races while I'm doing this, and that'll help splatter it around some more. That's probably enough of that. Spin her over. Get some more on the back side. And we'll set this guy down in here. And this one's been changed out a couple times. It's not having to press it real hard. Get some of this goo off our fingers. Trying not to get any of it on this outside surface that we spent all this time cleaning. Alright, we're going to get a different size one of these. I believe it's this one I need. It looks pretty close. This is when we'll splatter grease everywhere. Just slightly give that a tap until it feels like it's bottomed out, and I think we are. Take our screw back out of there. Clean this off before we set it down and get everything else gooey. Put it back in the box so you don't lose the pieces, Lee. Okay. Alright, back in the box. Shut that. And at this point, this guy is ready to get reinstalled on the car. Alright, now we're back over here. Who's got our piece? We're gonna gently, well, before we do that, make sure that there isn't any dirt or debris or anything that's going to screw our seal up on here. Doesn't feel like. I'm just going to gently slide that on a little bit. Make sure rub this off a little bit so we aren't getting bad stuff in our grease. Give this a little bit of a tap. Need a little bit more than that. Grab us a brass. We got our little brass guy here. That way we can tap around this and not worry about hurting anything. It's the softest metal in the equation. So if we hurt anything, we hurt the tool. Just slowly work her in. Sure we don't go too far on one side or the other. Unless it wants to slide in evenly, then we can give it a little extra. Right there. And I'm not hitting this hard, just enough to get it to go. There, it's making a different sound, which tells me that we are seated. Wipe that grease off before we get it everywhere. And then we got to put the lock on. Now there's a little hole over here that notch goes into. And then that'll slide right over. And I did some research since I took this apart to make sure I wasn't crazy, but there are left-handed threads and right-handed threads of these. depending on which side of the car you're on. This is the driver's side. And more or less it's spinning with the tire the way the tire would be going in a forward fashion, so that the momentum will tighten it instead of loosening it. If it spun the other direction with the wheel, and this lock nut would, or lock washer would fail, it would allow that nut to spin with the tire eventually and work this guy off, which would be bad. All right, now I need this guy. Same thing, we want to make sure we don't got anything that's going to get trapped in the grease. This has been laying here since I took this apart. And just make it snug. There we go. Big thing is you don't want to over crank on this little nut, because the threads will go away. So it's better to have it snug than super tight. And all you're doing is holding that center part of the bearing flush up against this back area. It's not really carrying the load, because the load is going to come this way. Granted, when you're going in a turn and stuff, it's going to take some load, but this round shaft is going to be the majority of what's taking that. All right, so we got a round little hole over there, so we'll come over here and we'll bend this up. Is there a good way to do this? Probably, I'm not sure what it is. I'm going to probably use this chisel to start it. Making sure not to get into your bearing race, that would be bad. You're just folding this up against the nut to keep it from loosening. Alright. So this guy's together now. We'll give her some spin. Work that lube around into everything a little bit while it's not loaded. Alright. Should have worked it into everywhere. Now we need to put our gaskets and seals in place. This is one of said gaskets. That guy just sits down in there like that. And then we're going to take a little bit of goo. As long as it hasn't dried up in the goo container. Yeah, there's some. I'm just going to put a little bit down to that O-ring region. And we only want enough just that it kind of coats it. If you put too much, all it's going to do is just smear everywhere, get into the bearings, make a mess. You may get away without even using any of this, but it's just a little insurance policy to make sure that things seal, irregularities in the metal, what have you. You also notice now that my bearing is sticking out a little bit. No, it's not. Whenever you tighten this plate on there, that'll push that all back together too. But it's better if it's the little screw that holds that on isn't doing all the work. In the first go, at least. once you bolt the wheels on stuff, that'll also do that. But all right, so that's the first go. And we got to put this guy on. This one came folded up in the package. Same thing. You use a little bit more goo and probably not put this in here and be okay. But just another thing to take up a little bit of space in there for irregularities in the shape of things to help seal things. Alright, now we'll take a little bit of goo and just coat the paper. Just enough to say it's on there. Making sure not to get it down into where grease is down here also. A little bit more around that hole than I wanted to, but the screw pushed out the backside. Oh, and I made a mistake. These of you that are keen on the things have already pointed out, and they're screaming at me on the screen. There's 3 holes in the gasket. 1, 2, 3. They need to correspond with the holes in the plate. There's one over here. I have this on upside down. So, we're going to gently peel this guy back off. They never come off near as easy as they go on. I guess it's not that he's upside down, he's just sideways. Locked wrong. Alright. So me making a mistake on the screen should show you guys what not to do. See, there's no hole right there. There is up here. Get our 3 holes lined up. 1, 2, 3 holes. And we'll slide this guy back on. Now you can put this goo on the gasket before you put it on if you're more confident that way too. Doesn't matter. It's whatever way makes sense to you. Alright. Smear, smear, smear. Everything's got goo on it. Alright. I'll get some goo off of me, and we can put our half axle shaft in. Take that guy off. Inspect it a little, make sure we don't have anything in there that we don't want in there or on the shaft itself, like silicone. And we'll clean this backside up a little bit. That's where a piece of Scotch-Brite comes in handy. Truth be told, I should have had this cleaned before now, but frankly I forgot. wipe her off a little bit. It's going to be nice and clean for what we need to do. And we're going to note, I like to turn this so that there's the one hole up and the non-hole spot is down. And we'll take this guy. You don't have to be super careful at this stage because there's nothing for it to rub on. Now we got to remember that orientation. The dead empty hole, or the non-hole down. Wheel around, get her to go into the center carrier. 1, 2, 3, still good. Now we got to tap that on. Also remembering that we got to get our splines lined up. There we go. Yeah, you don't hit on this hard until it decides to go into the internal splines, or you'll just end up making a mess. Alright. Now this guy goes in here. Now, little bitty screws, all that hold your axle on until put the wheels and the brakes and such on. And in that process, most likely you may have pushed the bearing out a little bit, so you want to make sure that stub shaft is the way out. See there, it moved out a little bit. I could see a gap in here. Alright, tighten that up a little bit. Find our screwdriver that we set down somewhere. There it is. We can get some more tighten on that. Still not the whole way. What has happened is that bearing slid in this carrier a little bit. And as we tighten the hub, that'll give it, as you tighten this guy on, that'll tighten these other two and give you a more of a push. So the same thing, we got to get this guy clocked the right direction. 3 holes. Alright. This guy in here. Find the other missing screw. And that's why these screws are important early on. I complain about people not putting these in because they have a purpose. The same thing here, that hole. Now you can get in and make sure that guy is good and tight when you're doing a final tightening on these. Alright, and now when you put the wheel on, it'll also press this whole assembly tighter together because those go clear through from the back. We got just a little bit of drag on the brakes, which is a good place to start. And that finishes up the rear axle. Hope this helped you guys, and we'll leave it at that till the next video. We're gonna have to, in a future video, I'm going to bleed, and I also have to put a new master cylinder in. That's all pretty standard procedure at that point. Alrighty, here we go.